computer. Okay, so I'm going to introduce the SA2 project and the Merchants of Cool, which is a documentary, okay, that draws a bridge between SA1, its topic, American consumerism, and the topic for SA2, which, as I said, is gender construction and performance. All right, but first let's talk about what those things mean. Okay, let me stop sharing my screen here with you so I can see you all. All right, what's gender, you guys?
Gender is like how you view your, isn't gender like how we present ourselves as people based on, usually based on like biological sex, but also on like how we see those roles, I guess?
Yes, that's gender. Okay, so I like, Debbie, that you differentiated in your answer between gender and biology, right? Because that's the difference between gender and sex, right? And just in terms of what those things mean, not necessarily in terms of how people understand them, right? Because as Debbie suggested, we generally conflate those things, right? We generally squish them together, so we think of them as one and the same. We think of gender and sex as the same. Would you agree with that assertion?
Yeah.
I'm asking you guys to generalize. Okay, you personally may not think of them as the same, right? Especially here in Santa Cruz. we have a somewhat, folks who think this way like to think of it as more highly evolved concept of gender than the general population of the US. But generally in the US, when we're not trying to think about it consciously, we squish those two things together. We conflate them into one thing, gender and sex. Or at the very least, we think of them as very closely related, if not mutually constitutive. We don't think of them as separate. That a person's physical body doesn't necessarily determine their gender, right? Because that's what sex is. It's biology. It's the parts you have, okay? It's your reproductive parts. That determines your sex. And gender is, as Debbie said, the way you present yourself, okay? Why do you guys think that gender and sex are generally conflated in people's minds? Why do those two things go together? There is a logic to it. What do you think it is? There's a logical reason for why we think of gender and sex as the same thing, often. Right? It's culture versus nature, right? Gender is culture. Isn't that right? Gender is how we present ourselves, how we look. Okay, the kinds of things we wear, right? And nature is the kinds of things our bodies can do. So what explains the relationship that most people think exists necessarily between culture and nature, between gender and sex? There goes my dang dog again. Okay, somebody came to my door earlier. Dogs don't like that when people come to your door. What do you guys think? Should I start calling on people? I know you know this. I know you know this. And guys, it's better when you talk. You don't want to sit here and listen to me talk the whole time, do you? And just for your information, I'm intending to end this meeting early, but I can't do that if people don't participate, because that just makes everything take longer if I have to drag it out of you, right? All right, let me see. Tyne, why do you think it is that people tend to think necessarily that gender and sex are related, if not the same thing?
I think a lot of it's just like in our society, like we like imagine, and I think there's also like a misconception that people don't really realize that there's a difference. I think that's a big part of it.
Okay, that's true, and I'm asking you guys why that exists. Okay, so let me back up a little bit. Let me ask you, what kinds of things constitute gender? Gender is presented how? How do we know what a person's gender is? And we're sort of jumping ahead to the performance part. Okay, but that's okay. We can talk about all of these things interchangeably because they're all related. How do we know a person's gender, you guys? Where does it come from?
Where does what come from? Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
How do we know a person's gender?
I guess how they present themselves, like you said. I guess what people want you to know about them. I mean, that's
right. What specific things like tell you that a person is a female? Because that's gender, right? Female and male. Both those categories are also sexual categories, right? Females have female body parts. Males have male body parts. But they're also gender. So how do we know when a person identifies as female? Sam, how do we know when a person identifies as female? Sam Coffey.
What was the question again? Sorry.
It's okay. This is what I'm sensing.
What was the general question?
The general question was, the specific question was, how do we know when a person identifies as female?
When they say they do. Okay,
that's one way, right?
As far as like
do they have to come up to you and say, I'm a female?
Yeah.
Yeah? In Santa Cruz they do.
Well, a lot of people here use like pronouns, and like a lot of how they're addressed, so you can kind of know that. Another thing is kind of just like a lot of people just assume it on like looking at someone, which is wrong to do, but that's kind of the like society we are in today, is just like physical appearance, and unfortunately it's not the case.
I see. Okay, thank you for answering. Now I'm starting to sense perhaps a reason other than the one I thought for your guys' hesitancy to answer my question, because you don't want to say the wrong thing, right? So Sam was being very careful, right? But what we're doing is we're generalizing about culture, you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and just give you all a pass, right? I'm going to say present company accepted. Have you heard that expression before? Accepted with a C means that all of us in this discussion, right, are not implicated by the generalizations that we make about our culture. But we've got to be able to generalize about our culture, right? Our culture is a way. It just is. Okay, there are rules in our culture. All right, and we're aware of them. We're aware of the rules, and sometimes we're consciously aware of them, and sometimes we're not. Sometimes we just operate on the basis of those rules without being consciously aware that we're doing it, because that's how culture works, right? Culture gets us when we're really young, right? And it trains us to look at things in a certain way, in a certain specific way, and not in other ways. And gender is a product of culture. So that's where the construction comes in, right? And so what I'm trying to get you guys to do is explore the difference between nature and culture, between gender, right, and sex. Does that make sense? Okay, so our culture constructs a particular norm of gender for us, right? Which it gives us when we're really young, before we're thinking critically about anything. And then all of society reinforces that all the time. It's constant, you guys. We're constantly being given messages about what's properly female and what's properly male. Okay? And in Santa Cruz, we've been acculturated to be very careful about that, but that's not the norm. Still, you guys, the norm out there sees gender and sex as the same thing, right? Or it should be the same thing. If it's not the same thing, right, then that's wrong. Because what does norm mean? You guys still out there? What's a norm?
Mean?
Yeah, what is a norm? N-O-R-M.
I guess a norm is kind of like a value or like a rule that's like commonly accepted.
Yeah. Norm is just short for normal, right? Norm is the noun and normal is the adjective that describes a thing. A thing is normal, right, if it's consistent with the norm. And the norm is what we're used to, right? The norm is what's the way things usually are. So that we have norms for gender, don't we? Give me a thumbs up if you agree that we have norms for gender. Thank you. I feel like I'm talking to myself, you guys. And I'm hearing some feedback. Someone unmuted? Oh, that must be Debbie?
Huh?
I think that's you. I think I'm hearing some noise in the background coming from your square. Thank you. Okay, so come on, you guys. This doesn't have to take this long. Alrighty. So, what are some gender norms for females?
Probably like house-related chores. Like even part of the reason why like women go into nursing is because it's seen as like an extension of their role as mothers in a way.
Excellent point.
That's something to do with it.
Yes. So, you guys, by the way, if I haven't said this already, I think I have, but let me just say it again. If I cut you off while you're talking, it's just Zoom. It's hard for me to tell, especially when I can't see you, whether you're pausing and you're going to continue speaking or whether you're done. So I don't intend to start speaking before you're done, but sometimes I do. Sorry. Okay, but Debbie just made an excellent point. Okay, that is that the jobs that people do, right, are normalized for females and males. Women generally are expected to perform certain roles in our society. Gender roles, they're called, right? And primarily, a woman's role is seen as relegated to the domestic sphere, the home, right? That's where women are supposed to be doing their work, primarily in the home. And why? What is it about nature, okay, that gives a rationale for that rule? Does my question make sense, you guys?
I think it has something to do with like our transition from being like hunter-gatherers where everyone had to do everything together to survive to like agriculture and domestication, because it gave people free time to do things. And so like I guess their way of dealing with that is just because like a lot of like cis women, like they give birth, so it's seen as like their responsibility because it came from like their body.
Good. That's right. That's it. Exactly, Debbie. Okay. It's because our bodies are built to bear and care for children. That's nature, right? That's biology. That's just how we're made. All right. So in a sense, it's reasonable to extrapolate from that our proper role is in the home, that's the kind of job we should be doing. And if we're going to be working outside of the home, then it should be in some sort of caretaking field, like Debbie said, nursing, teaching, right? Does that make sense, you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
So that's what I would have been driving at for the last 10 minutes when I asked you why people often conflate, see as the same thing, nature and gender. Is there's a biological, rational reason for that. It's because of the way our bodies are built, right? Of course, men should be the protectors and the providers, right? Isn't that their cultural role, traditionally? You guys? What do you think? Jose, you go by Ramon, right? Jose, are you there?
Yeah.
Thank you, Annie. You go by Ramon, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Your name says Jose in your little box, so I almost forgot that. Okay, but is that correct, Ramon, that traditionally, okay, the masculine role in our culture is to provide and protect?
Yeah.
Okay, and the traditional role for women is to bear children and then care for them and care for the men, the adult men, right?
Traditionally, yes.
Traditionally, yes. But you're being very careful about saying that's not how it should be. Good job. Okay, but guys, what I'm trying to tease out of you is what you all know about our culture and what you all know about our bodies, right? To talk about these concepts of gender, construction, and performance, which are going to be the topic for Essay 2. And I need to make sure we all understand that we're all on the same page about what that stuff means. So that's why I'm spending so much time and effort trying to establish that shared understanding. Okay, so gender is culture, right? Gender is the stuff that we're taught about how we should look and what we should do because of the way our bodies are made. And there's some basis in nature, biology, the way our bodies are built, in other words, sex, for those beliefs about what our proper roles are. Okay, but as Debbie was saying, those are kind of primitive concepts because our culture has evolved to the point where we're not necessarily constrained by those roles anymore. Okay, women can and do many, 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 many different things outside the home. And men can and do many, many, many things inside the home. Right? Right, you guys? Okay,
right.
Males in this class, do you guys like do cleaning chores around the house?
Yes. Sweeping.
Good.
Dishes.
God damn it. Oops, I cussed in Zoom. Yeah. Okay, my husband cooks. He does all the cooking and the grocery shopping because I don't go outside my house anymore. Okay? I barely leave this office. So he does all that stuff, right? And when the kids were young, he changed their diapers. Okay? He didn't just play, ball with them, baseball, right? He did all kinds of caretaking things. And, I pay the bills. Okay? I handle all of the money transactions and the credit cards and the health care and all of that crap. I do all that crap. He doesn't like to, so I do it. Okay? So we're not necessarily constrained by those old natural, okay, things that used to determine gender based on what body you had. Does that make sense, you guys? And so now gender is much more of a cultural construct. Okay, the degree to which our ideas about masculine versus feminine exist, and that binary, okay, that line between masculine and feminine is getting increasingly blurry too. I think that's one of the reasons Sam has such a difficult time answering that question. Okay, but Sam, what you need to know is that that's because you live in Santa Cruz.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, other places in the country, that line is not as blurry as it is for us. All right, because we understand that just because you have a certain body doesn't mean you need to look a certain way. Okay, you can look any way you want. or you know, no way at all, no specific way at all. But there is still a specific way that we understand generally a person should look if they're identifying as female, right? And what is that?
Long hair, painted nails.
Okay, thank you, Anthony.
I think it's also just kind of like an energy someone gives off, like whether or not you consider them feminine. I feel like that's more about the energy that people have.
Okay, so mannerisms,
Yeah,
right?
like their mannerisms and stuff.
Mannerisms. There are masculine versus feminine mannerisms, right, you guys? Okay, what people do with their hands, how they hold their bodies. Okay, those are gendered, masculine and feminine. That's part of the performance in the name of this essay. Is how do we present ourselves in a way that others can identify as either masculine or feminine? Does that make sense? You guys with me? Give me a thumbs up if that makes sense. Sign, does that make sense? Sam Ochoa, does that make sense? Josh, does that make sense?
Are we not supposed to use...
Okay, thank you. I think that's everybody. Camera? I'm sorry, Debbie, what?
Are we like not supposed to use our camera when people are talking?
No, I would love it if I could see you all, as I've said multiple times. But I'm not going to make you, because I don't know what your lives are like.
Oh.
You know, I don't know what kind of technology everybody has. So I'm not gonna require it. But if I can see you, that makes things go a lot easier, doesn't it? But it's up to you. Okay. All right, so mannerisms Debbie mentioned. What else, Annie? What are some other ways that we know a person is female?
I think sometimes right off the bat, hair. Like I have really, really long hair. I think hair can say a lot, but I've also seen guys with really long hair as well. But I think that's a big, because traditionally guys cut their hair shorter.
Right, good. And Anthony mentioned hair too, right? And traditionally, like you said, okay, females have long hair and males have short hair. And if a guy has long hair, right, it's less uncommon now for guys to have long hair, you know, very long hair.
Yeah.
Okay, but you guys remember the Beatles? No, anybody know who the Beatles are?
Of course.
In the 60s, thank you, Anthony. In the 60s, those guys had long hair, and it wasn't even that long. But everybody's like, oh my God, right? They're long-haired hippies. They're girls, right? So, I mean, looking back at history is one of the ways in which we know that we're making this stuff up, that it is constructed, that we're building it, because that's what it means to construct something. It means to put it together, right? And to say something is socially constructed means that we're building it in our society, that we're deciding in our culture what the rules are, what the norms are, okay? And just looking at history can confirm that for us, that gender is not necessarily tied to nature, because it used to be against the rules for men to have long hair. And it's still not as common for men to have long hair as it is for women, okay? But, you know, other things like, guys, women used to not be able to wear pants, okay? Women used to have to wear dresses. And so that's another thing that's gendered, is clothing. It's another way you can look at a person and tell what gender they identify as, based on what they're wearing. Okay, dresses and skirts in our culture are for girls. Not in every culture though. And that's another way that you know that these things are social and cultural constructs, these rules, these norms. It's about what we're used to. And we can get used to other things. All you have to do is look at history, right? And see how these things change. Okay. So what are some ways in which you know a person is male? What things are coded masculine in our society? We talked about behavior, right? We talked about roles, in social roles for people, the kinds of things they can do. What about how they look? Talked about hair. What are some specifics for men?
Beards, facial
Okay,
hair.
facial hair.
Maybe voice.
Okay, the quality of their voice. And that has a lot to do with nature, doesn't it, Annie and everybody else? Is that the pitch of your voice? Females generally have higher pitched voices, and males usually have lower pitched voices, and that has to do with the way their insides are made to produce a different sound when it comes out of your body. What else? What are some other things that are masculine about a way a person presents himself in our culture?
I think maybe quite literally by just like being big.
Okay, good.
Being bigger.
Yes, big and strong, right, you guys?
I wouldn't go that far, but sure.
No? Okay. Why not? Why isn't strength important for a man in our
I'm not saying
society?
it's not important. I think physically guys are bigger. That doesn't mean that they're strong at all. They're just physically bigger than women.
Okay.
Most of the time.
Again, that's biology, right? Generally, men have larger bodies than women, which is one of the reasons their proper role traditionally has been to protect and provide, because they're physically better suited to do that, people would argue, right? But have you guys heard about the 2 female Army Rangers? Did you guys hear about the 2 women that went through the basic training for that role? It's an elite military position to be a ranger. And the qualifications for that position are extremely physically rigorous. Okay? And generally, it has been thought for years that women are just not physically capable of doing it. And generally, that's true. Women's bodies are generally smaller and less strong than men's bodies. But these 2 women did it. And now they're Army Rangers. Okay? But again, I'm asking about culture. So isn't strength for men a cultural value, you guys?
Yeah, I think that like physical strength is definitely like something people associate with.
Okay, and women are supposed to be sort of soft.
Like especially when you think about strength, like athletic strength is usually associated with men.
Yeah,
and
so there are female
associated with like.
Sorry, Debbie. There are female bodybuilders, right, you guys? Have you seen any of these female bodybuilders? These women who bulk up and get huge, huge, huge muscles? No? Nobody's seen a female bodybuilder? Okay, let me find one. Thank you. Thank you, Anthony. I'm going to share my screen with you because I think maybe a picture will help this discussion. Okay. Female, let's see if I can type. B-O-D-Y, bodybuilders. There we go. Thank you, Google, for helping me. Check that out. Okay, let's look at some images. Holy moly. Okay, so their bodies can do that. They probably have some help, right, from drugs, but they can do that. How do we feel about this, you guys? How do you guys feel about these images of these women? What's your reaction? Come on, tell me. Honest.
I think it's interesting because I know that a lot of women struggle with their body types, especially like because of like the images that we see in the media. Like it's changed a little bit, but like there's still kind of like a body type that people expect to have. And so like if their body doesn't fall into that, they feel like they have to, you know, change it. And like part of that is like because of body dysmorphia, but like yeah, so I guess it's interesting to see that like other people are on the opposite end, like they're building their body more for like athletic use as opposed to just appearance.
Oops, shoot. Okay.
Yeah,
So-
I agree with Debbie, and I also just think that it has to do with personal preference. Like, if they want to look like that, they're gonna do it. It really is just personal preference.
Sure. But I'm asking you guys how you feel about it. Okay. So now I am not accepting you.
Okay.
Okay. Now I'm implicating you in culture because we're all products of a culture. Is this normal
Well,
for
how
women?
I feel about the female bodybuilder?
Yes, I'm asking you guys how
How
you
I feel about it? Yeah, it's not my personal preference. I don't think I ever will see myself looking like that ever. But I can see why people do. So no, not that I like don't agree with what I'm looking at, but it is not my personal preference.
Okay. So do any of you feel somewhat put off by these images?
I don't, but I definitely feel like their bodies are built for like a certain purpose. Like when you see Olympic bodies, like their muscles are like built a different way, so they can do certain stuff. So I feel like that's just like what it is. Like normally, you wouldn't have your neck muscles like pop out naturally, like most people don't. But I guess they probably like built their bodies to look that way. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So what I'm trying to get you guys to reckon with and bring into your conscious awareness is how we're all acculturated, okay, to see certain female representations as normal and others as not. Okay. And that's because we're all products of this culture, right? Whether we want to consciously accept that or not. All right. And that's how you can know it's culture, because if something makes you uncomfortable, right, then you know that that's because it's not normal. It's not what you're used to seeing. Okay. And then because we're human beings and we have big brains and we can think critically, we can override that discomfort, right, to think more fairly about something, like you guys were all doing, those of you who responded to my question. But the initial feeling that most people have, maybe you guys are the exceptions, but the initial feeling that most people in our culture have about these images of these women is that they're not normal. Okay, they make most people a little uncomfortable. Okay, maybe some people a lot uncomfortable. That this is not the way a woman should look. Okay, look at these images from the 90s. This is really interesting. Okay, in the 90s, these were the bodybuilders. These were toned women, right? And you can see how things shift, right? When you look at more recent images of bodybuilding women. And that's another way that you know that these ideas about what's normal and what's not normal, what's acceptable and what's not for gender performance is a cultural product. It's something that we're making up because it changes. Okay? All right, let's move on. Let me stop sharing my screen here. Let's see, where did let's go back to you guys. Okay, so we talked about gender construction. We talked about gender norms. All right. And what I've been trying to tease out of you guys and what you're resisting, okay, is an important concept for you to understand for going into watching Merchants of Cool. Because Merchants of Cool is a course text, okay, one that you'll be able to refer to in your essay, that draws a bridge between American consumerism and American gender construction and performance. Okay, specifically in the US is what we're going to talk about. All right, and in the US, we are being sold a particular brand, a particular version of femininity and a particular version of masculinity, which we are all expected to perform. And there's all kinds of pressure coming at us from our culture to present ourselves in a particular way if we want to be perceived as female, and to present ourselves in a particular other way if we want to be perceived as male. All right? And these are not necessarily the exact same as traditional notions of masculinity and femininity that we started talking about. But we're not done with that. Okay, we're still doing it. in our culture, even though you guys are way past it, clearly. Okay, generally our culture is still doing this traditional gender role stuff. Okay, it's just been repackaged by consumerism to be slightly different. Okay, so for example, do you guys know who Britney Spears is? Who's Britney Spears, you guys? Do you know? Kendall, do you know who Britney Spears is?
Yeah.
Kendall?
Did your screen speed up?
I'm sorry, what, Debbie?
Did your screen speed up, or was it my connection?
It wasn't me.
Oh.
It must be your
voice-
internet.
Yeah, that's probably what it is.
Hey, Kendall, are you there? Kendall, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, can you say that again?
Hi, do you know who Britney Spears is?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Kendall, who do you think is, Britney Spears was popular in the early 2000s, right? When she
Yeah.
was 17 and doing music. I don't know what she does now. I don't know if she still does music. She still pops up every once in a while in the culture because she's having some sort of mental health issue, right?
Yeah.
And maybe she does music once in a while. I don't know. I don't pay that close attention to her. But can you envision her? Can you imagine how she looked
Yeah.
when she was 17? And even how she still looks. And I have seen some images of her, right? And she's still trying to do 17, which I feel a kind of way about, which I won't go into. But yeah, so that's a version of feminine performance. Would you agree, you guys, all of you?
Yeah.
That's one way to be a girl, the way Britney Spears is a girl. And it's all about how she looks. It's about how she behaves. It's about what she does with her hair and her makeup and her outfits and her body. It's about how she dances. Okay, she dances differently than men do. Okay, masculine men. Let me be more specific for you guys. Okay, but that's a version of femininity. And Britney Spears shows up as a specific example in this documentary you guys are about to watch, which is trying to make a point about the link between American consumerism and gender construction and performance in our culture. Is everybody with me so far?
Yeah.
It's drawing a link between those two things, that the people who want to sell you stuff, correct, have a big part to play in what we think about how to do gender in our culture. They are producing culture for us, okay, because they want to sell us all the stuff that goes with it. If you're going to be a girl like Britney Spears is a girl, you've got to have all the stuff that goes with it, right? And that stuff, there are people who will sell you that stuff, okay? And they want you to buy it. They want your money, okay? Who's the now Britney Spears, you guys? Samantha, who's the now Britney Spears? Samantha, are you there? Samantha, are you there?
Did you say male?
No, now. Who's Britney?
Oh.
Who performs the same function in our society now in 2020 that Britney Spears did in 2001? Samantha, can you think of somebody who is popular now that is kind of like Britney Spears was then in our culture? Does my question make sense?
I don't know. I can't think of anybody.
You can't think of anyone? Okay. How about you, Josh?
Do I know anyone that's a popular singer?
You can't think of anybody? I can barely hear you.
Hello? Can you hear me?
I can just barely hear you. Maybe you need to get closer to your speaker device, your mic device.
How is it now?
That's a little better. Can you think of anyone?
I don't know, maybe like Miley Cyrus or something? I don't know.
Sure, that's a good example. Miley Cyrus. Okay, she's doing more recently kind of the same thing Britney was doing like 20 years ago, right? With the way she presents herself, the kinds of things she wears, okay, and the kind of performances that she gives. She's performing a particular brand of femininity. Okay, how about some other people? Katrina, how about you? Can you think of anybody in our culture now who's doing kind of the same shtick that Britney did in 2001? Katrina, did you hear my question?
Yeah,
Does it make sense?
I just don't know.
You don't know? You can't think of anybody. Do you guys listen to music? Do you consume popular culture? Okay, are you on the internet? Danny says yes, she's on the internet. Okay, Tyne, how about you? Can you think of anybody?
My original thought was also Miley Cyrus. But I'm someone like that that's kind of like, I don't know, in like the influential way, like the Kardashians, I guess, but not really like in the same sense as Britney Spears. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that, because the Kardashians don't do anything. Right? They're famous for just being famous. And, you know, because they have body parts that people want to see on the internet, right? And so they sell those, especially, well, I can't even say especially Kim anymore, because the younger ones are out there selling their body parts too, right? You guys don't know anything about Cardi B? I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but I find that very difficult to believe.
I love Cardi B.
There it is. Thank you, Anthony.
I was gonna say earlier.
Thanks for playing. Yeah, okay. So, I mean, and you guys can see, and this is one of the points that the documentary is going to make, is that there's a constant amplification, right, of this stuff that people do in order to sell themselves and sell you all the stuff that goes with a particular look, right, or a particular way of being, a particular lifestyle. As Twitchell would say, lifestyle is important, right? There's a whole bunch of products that go with that, right? And it's not just for girls, it's for guys too, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes with being properly masculine. And so there's a link between consumerism and gender construction and performance. All right, and I hope that makes sense. This took way longer than I thought it would. And I want to let you guys go so you can work on your essay 1. And perhaps that's what's going on in this meeting, is that you guys are all preoccupied with essay 1. All right, but we needed to cover these aspects of essay 2 because, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen with you now. Or I'm going to share my screen with you now. Sorry, backwards. Okay, because you have some assignments to do between now and when I see you again for essay 2. All right, and the first one is to watch this documentary that I've been talking about. Let me show you that assignment. Okay, there it is. There's the assignment, and here are your instructions. You need to download this document. It's a list of questions about this documentary. The documentary is about 50 minutes long, 50 minutes long. All right, so while you watch it, before you watch it, download this document and look at the questions, because the questions are going to be answered in the documentary. So you should have this document next to you so that you can write down answers to these questions. All right, and then you're going to submit those to this assignment. Okay, and you can just play the documentary right from here. You can make it bigger if you want. All right, so that's assignment number 1. All right, and then you have readings to do, 2 articles that you need to read on the topic that we were just discussing, and then a quiz on those 2 articles. Okay, any questions about any of that? I talked already about discussion leader sign up. Okay, all right, so it doesn't sound like there are any questions. Oh, someone's chatting at me. Let me check my chat. 9 people. Oh, you people were chatting at me and I didn't know. I'm so sorry. Okay. Buffering every now and then, Samantha says. Wearing a dress. Good, Kendall, thank you. All right. Police are supposed to help protect us. Yes. Billie Eilish. Billie Eilish is interesting, you guys. Kylie Jenner. Yes, Debbie. Billie Eilish is interesting, and we can talk about Billie Eilish more later, because she's really a gender bender, isn't she? She's bending our notions of binary, masculine versus feminine, representation and performance. Okay, she's trying to be androgynous, which is a concept that is going to be presented in this article by Mary Pfeiffer. Okay, so good. Sorry, I didn't know you guys were typing at me. Yeah, okay. All right, thank you for that participation. All right, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go. Okay, and good luck with essay 1. As I said, if you have any trouble getting it submitted and getting your article submitted, hey, email me. All righty. Okay, you guys, talk to you later. Have a good weekend. Hang in there.
Bye bye. Have a good one.
Bye bye. You too.